Hello, Paul Merton has found fame and fortune with his brilliant improvisation on television shows like Whose Line Is It Anyway and Have I Got News For You. His one-man show has recently toured 68 cities throughout Britain and Ireland. Since he was a child, he's been fascinated by the question of what makes people laugh. He's a high-definition writer-performer, which is what I wanted to ask him about. He's someone whose work, thanks to television and video, can have a posterity denied his precursors in Victorian music hall and before then. His idol, Buster Keaton, is like Merton, a man who also came in near the beginning of a new medium, which captured and preserved his talent. The same could well happen to Paul Merton, as I think Misha Skora's film demonstrates.
Right, so we've... OK...
blue parkand's going, rest of the lights going, and then I think we'll have this special, this overhead special.
Right.
Which you'll kind of walk into.
OK. This is crucial, this beginning. Don't get this right, it could be a lynching.
True.
Now walk out. It seems such a silly little thing to just practice and think about. But it is that thing about just how do you inform the audience what kind of evening it's going to be? And I think this reeks of desperation. I did this show on tour last autumn. I did 68 dates. I did the show all over the place. Liverpool, Dublin, Stoke. 68 dates, 2 hours per night, 2 hours and not one laugh. Start the car. Because I hadn't done stand-up comedy for about 10 years, it was like I'd never done it. People had no idea I'd ever been a stand-up comedian. They thought I was born to sit behind a desk and make quips about the week's news. A lot of you might know me from this angle. 9 years of Have I Got News For You doing that. That's all I ever do on that show. Sometimes if it was a Christmas special I might do that. But the money's got to be right, do you know what I mean? Here's a treat. I once tried to write a sketch about a dinner party and I couldn't do it. Because my experience when I was growing up with eating dinner was that you sat at a table, you ate your dinner, and then you went and sat somewhere else. You didn't sit about talking about it. Hey, look, how did you manage to boil all the green out of this cabbage? It's positively alabaster.
Looking back now, what do you think about your childhood was the most important thing to what you're doing now at this moment? If you could sift through and say, well, those two things, actually, they really mattered. I didn't realise it at the time.
That's interesting. I have a sister who's about 6 or 7 years younger than me, so for the first years of my life I was an only child, and I think playing on my own and not having... born in 1957, so growing up in the early 60s, not as much television then as we have now. And Sundays as well, very much like the Hancock episode where they're sitting at home wanting something to do. So I remember playing a lot of games and creating characters with my fingers and thumbs. This was a man who had a sort of certain voice, and this was another character. And that kind of stuff where I was feeding my imagination, being a very shy boy, but feeding my imagination on my own, and discovering as well how popular you can become if you make people laugh. And I remember distinctly, it's a very odd thing for a child to think, but I remember on my 7th birthday thinking to myself, now I can make the children laugh at school now, but I've got to do that when I'm 8. And then I've got to do it when I'm 9, and they'll be getting older, so I have to keep on making them laugh. So can I do it at 11 like I can do it now at this age, at the age of 7? And that's a bizarre thing, I think, to think of on your 7th birthday, to think, well, I'm doing all right now, but what's next year going to be like? Am I going to be over the hill at the age of 9? I was quite good at English in school at the age of 8, and then suddenly I found myself after the summer holidays being taught by a nun. Now, I've been brought up by the Catholics, baptised as a Catholic, I've been taught by the Catholics. One of the things that Catholics teach you is that over your shoulder is a guardian angel, about 10 foot behind, who watches everything that you do. So it's a bit like being in a pantomime. Even when you're on your own, if you do something naughty, it's a case of he's behind you. Not that I'm suggesting that this would induce paranoia in young children, because that would be cruel, and not at all like the Catholic Church that I know. The nun that taught me English when I was 8 years old was called Sister Galista. She stands in front of the class, chalk dust on her arms. She says, "The essay you're going to write is called What I Did in My Summer Holiday." So as I say, I was quite good at English, so I write. "For my summer holidays, I went to Great Yarmouth with my mother and my father and my sister. It was very nice. I sat on the beach eating sandwiches. A spaceship landed and took me to the moon. I walked around on the moon. It was very nice." I write a bit more, I hand the essay in. 2 days later, I get it handed back. Red ink. 3 out of 10. She makes me stand up in front of the class. And when you stand up in front of the class when you're 8 years old, it's quite humiliating to be told to stand up in front of the class. And she looks at me and she says, "I'm not a low in this essay. I'm not a low in this essay because it's not true. You didn't go to the moon. You're a liar." And at the age of 8, you haven't got the verbal wit or dexterity to say, "Oh, go fuck yourself."
When Paul was 8, the Martin family moved from Fulham to South London. His father worked on the Underground and Merton was at the end of the Northern Line. Paul later took his professional name from the borough of Merton. He lived in this house for the rest of his childhood and adolescence.
When I was about 12, 13, I got very interested in silent films. I'd seen them on television, and luckily there was a shop near me that used to sell them. I remember finding a Buster Keaton film that I didn't know you could buy on 8mm, and I was thrilled. This was like the holy grail. And rushing home and drawing the bedroom curtains at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, thick curtains which my mother had put up to block out daylight, threading this into the projector and watching this comedian from 1920s there on a sheet on your wall. I then used to make up a tape of piano music, so you sort of play, you could play in conjunction with showing the film. Buster Keaton, I think, was my favourite because he was in an age of screen acting, and to demonstrate that you were a comedian you had to wear a big bushy beard and fall over a lot. He was doing very little in terms of facial response, but was a brilliant actor. I took the projector to Ireland once to visit my relatives over there, and all the sort of kids, the 7-year-olds around the neighbourhood heard about this and came to watch it, and they were just absolutely enthralled and enchanted by somebody putting a sheet up. And it always felt to me as if like you were the last part of the creative process, the projectionist. It was a shy person's way of getting into comedy, is to show other people's comedy to other people, and so that's kind of what I was doing, I think. At the age of 8, I didn't realise that nuns were merely the warm-up act for the main attraction, the Jesuits. The Jesuit priests. Now, the secondary school I went to at the age of 12 was run by Jesuits. I end up being taught at a school where I'm being given corporal punishment by blokes in long black dresses. This is exactly the same. This playground hasn't changed at all.
Boys running around.
They're all the same. I mean, they're the same size and height as they were 20 years ago. The trouble was, Wimbledon College, the school, was a noted grammar school, and against its will it became comprehensive. And I was part of the first comprehensive intake, so this grammar school that had been very proud of its grammar school traditions, suddenly there's these oiks coming in, which was the comprehensive boys.
Paul used to come to school here, just like you. He was once in, what, you're all in grammar, are you?
Lower grammar.
Lower grammar. And some in grammar. That's right. You remember those years?
You know grammar very well, yeah.
Do you do any sports in there?
Sports, yeah, I used to play football.
Yeah.
I used to particularly like the football, like playing in the playground here. I used to stay till about 5 o'clock some nights.
Were you allowed big football, sir?
Allowed a big football? No, not in the playground.